The wind howls through Eagle's Crest Mountains, and nearly 3.8 kilometers away, a convoy erupts in flames. Not luck, not chance. It was the shot of Sarah Harlan, the fair-skinned woman with rosy cheeks, sharp green eyes blazing with determination, brown hair tied neatly to reveal her strong, attractive beauty, her athletic build with a full bust and slim waist commanding respect and intrigue. The woman they mocked, shoved into a converted closet because of her gender, dismissed as unfit for elite roles. The one they suspected because of her father's so-called betrayal, legacy from the war. Have you ever wondered if a woman oppressed by prejudice, who lost her father in the fires of conflict, could soar like an eagle and change military history forever? As she lay prone on that frozen peak, her eagle tattoo exposed on her back, a symbol inked in memory of her dad's final words, "Soar high, daughter," Sarah squeezed the trigger of her Barrett M82. The rifle's roar echoed, halting the convoy in a shower of sparks. But this wasn't just a military strike. It uncovered a dark secret tying the convoy to her father's death, overturning a system of hidden prejudices that had plagued her path. But what secret makes this shot not only save lives, but change everything? A tale of betrayal from within, where allies turn enemies, and one woman's resilience exposes the truth. Stick around. You won't believe how it unfolds. Sarah Harlan's journey to that frozen peak began long before she ever gripped a rifle, long before the world tried to clip her wings. It started in a quiet small town outside Fort Evergreen, a fictional military base tucked in the American heartland, where the air carried the distant echo of gunfire from training grounds. Sarah, with her fair skin glowing under the sun's gentle touch, sparkling green eyes that held a quiet storm of determination, and a strong, attractive build that turned heads. Her full bust and slim waist, speaking of a beauty forged in resilience rather than fragility, grew up feeling both empowered and isolated. She was the girl who preferred the crack of a shot to playground games, but in a world that saw her strength as an anomaly. Loneliness shadowed her like an uninvited companion. From the tender age of 7, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, watching her father Thomas Harlan clean his service weapon with the precision of a man who had stared death in the face. Thomas, a WWII veteran, with scars from the Pacific Theater etched into his soul, never treated her differently because she was a girl. His voice, rough yet tender, would fill the room. Bullets don't care about gender, Sarah. They only care about control. Eyes steady, breath even trigger smooth. Those words became her mantra, a shield against the doubts that would soon swarm. By 12, she could disassemble and reassemble a rifle, blindfolded her bedroom walls, adorned not with posters of stars, but with charts of ballistic coefficients and wind drift equations. Thomas's stories from the war weren't just tales of heroism. They were lessons in sacrifice. He spoke of comrades lost in the jungles of decisions made in the heat of battle that haunted him. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he handed her a faded letter from his time in the Pacific. "Soar like an eagle, my girl. No matter the storms rise above." It was his way of preparing her for a world that wouldn't always be kind. But high school brought the first real storms. When Sarah announced her dream of joining the military as a combat specialist, the ridicule crashed like waves. Her JROTC instructor laughed outright. "Women don't make elite snipers. Stick to support roles where you belong." The words stung, evoking that deep-seated compassion for the overlooked, the same feeling her father had described when fighting alongside unsung heroes in the war. Yet Sarah's spirit, like the eagle he invoked, refused to be grounded. She channeled the pain into excellence, majoring in physics, with a minor in meteorology in college, understanding that true snipers mastered the invisible forces: wind rotation, gravity. Recruiters, seeing her potential, but blinded by bias, suggested desk jobs, more suitable for someone like you. Each dismissal echoed the losses her father had endured, stirring a quiet outrage in her heart, a compassion for those who fought unseen battles. The small twist came at 18, when Sarah got her eagle tattoo on her back, a majestic bird in flight inked in memory of Thomas's words. To the world, it was just a personal mark of rebellion, a beautiful emblem on her fair skin, but it was more a symbol of her father's legacy, a reminder that soared beyond the ink, tying into secrets she hadn't yet uncovered. The pain of the needle mirrored the aches of growing up under scrutiny, but it fueled her. The mini-climax arrived in her final local shooting contest before enlisting. At 21, she faced off against seasoned boys, her green eyes locked on distant targets. She hit every mark with uncanny precision, calculating trajectories that left judges speechless. But a technical error, a deliberate sabotage by a male rival tampering with her scope, nearly cost her the win. Outrage burned in her chest, a fire kindled by years of being underestimated. Drawing on her father's lessons, she appealed calmly, presenting evidence of the foul play. The judges ruled in her favor, and as she claimed victory, a sweet wave of triumph washed over her. The first taste of overcoming that would define her path. Through it all, Sarah's resilience shone a quiet inspiration drawn from her youth. But as she stepped toward the military gates at 22, the prejudices loomed larger. Will prejudice extinguish her dream, or will she soar higher? The storms were just beginning. As Sarah Harlan stepped through the gates of Fort Hawthorne at 22, the weight of her dream pressed heavier than any rucksack she'd carry. The prejudices that had simmered in her small-town life now boiled over in the rigid world of military training, where every glance and command tested her resolve. With her fair skin flushed from the march, green eyes sharp and unyielding, and her athletic frame, that strong, attractive build, blending grace with power, she stood out not just for her beauty, but for the quiet fire that refused to be dimmed. Basic training was her call to adventure, a summons she couldn't ignore, pulling her from the ordinary shadows into the harsh light of combat aspirations. From day one, the drill sergeant spotted her as an easy target. "Harlan? You won't last a week," he sneered during the initial fitness test, his voice dripping with the same disdain she'd heard in high school halls. The men around her chuckled, their eyes appraising her slim waist and full bust, as if they were weaknesses rather than part of the resilient woman who had outshot boys twice her size. But Sarah channeled her father's words, controlling her breath, her focus unbreaking. She finished first in her platoon, outpacing even the strongest men, her green eyes locked forward, ignoring the mutters of, "Physical strength isn't everything. Wait for the psych eval." She aced that too, her scores the highest in class, turning skepticism into reluctant whispers. The true knot tightened when qualification day arrived for sniper school. Only one slot remained, and her competition was a burly male veteran, a former linebacker with 3 tours under his belt. His frame built for brute force, where hers was honed for precision. The final test, a series of timed precision shots under simulated combat. Stress hearts pounding, adrenaline surging. Ladies first. He smirked, his tone laced with the prejudice that had dogged her path. Sarah approached the firing line with the calm of someone who had calculated every variable. Wind distance, her own heartbeat. It was here, amid the tension, that a small twist unraveled her world. While reviewing her application file in a quiet moment before the test, she stumbled upon a classified note about her father, a dark secret from WWII, hinting at suspected betrayal during a Pacific mission. The words hit like a misfired round. Curiosity burned, misdirecting her thoughts. Was this why recruiters had pushed her toward support roles? Did it taint her legacy? The doubt gnawed, evoking a deep internal struggle, a compassion for her father's unseen battles that made her heart ache. In a flashback, she recalled his letter from the front, "Soar like an eagle, Sarah, even when the winds betray you." The eagle, that symbol from her tattoo, shifted in her mind. No longer just pain, but motivation urging her to prove the legacy pure. Steadying herself, she fired. 5 targets, 5 perfect hits, shattering the course record. The veteran extended his hand afterward, his smirk gone. "Damn, Harlan, remind me not to piss you off." It was the sweet first taste of respect, a mini-climax that washed away the morning's doubts, leaving her with a quiet triumph that touched the soul. Proof that control, not gender, defined the shot. But as she packed for the next phase, the father's secret lingered a shadow over her victory. Will she prove herself or quit before the dark truth emerges? The adventure was calling louder now. The echo of her victory in basic training faded quickly as Sarah Harlan plunged deeper into the unforgiving world of sniper school at Fort Hawthorne. The father's secret, that shadowy note in his file hinting at betrayal during White Tooth, clung to her like a persistent fog amplifying every doubt. Now surrounded by the stark barracks and relentless drills, the prejudices that had whispered in her past roared into full force. Her fair skin flushed with exhaustion, green eyes shadowed by uncertainty, and her strong, attractive build, that blend of grace and power, felt like a target rather than an asset. Assigned to a converted utility closet as her private quarters, the message was clear. "You don't belong here." It was a cage disguised as accommodation, a daily reminder of the walls closing in. The knots tightened from the start. Sergeant Major Hargrave, the lead instructor with his steely gaze and unyielding disdain, didn't hide his bias. "Gentlemen and lady," he drawled on day one, emphasizing the word like a punchline as she lined up with 17 men. His eyes skipped her deliberately. "Only 3 will finish this, and I'm looking at 2 right now." The laughter from the group cut deep, stirring a multi-layered storm, social exclusion on the surface, but beneath a churning internal conflict that threatened to drown her. When evaluations began, Hargrave's words hit like precision fire. "It's not personal, Harlan. Women have different muscle composition, different lung capacity. Science doesn't bend for equality." Sarah stared ahead, her response measured. "With respect, Sir Science also favors a smaller frame for less barrel interference. My resting heart rate is 52 BPM, and I've never missed a qual." He scoffed, but the seed of self-doubt took root. The training amplified it. 20-mile rucks with 80-pound packs, 72 hours without sleep in simulated combat. For Sarah, they doubled her load, accidentally, halving her water ration in oversights. Each step felt like a betrayal of her body, mirroring the deeper ache of her father's legacy. Was she fighting a losing battle just like he supposedly had? The internal knot twisted tight during a staged failure in week 3. Hargrave, sensing her resilience, sabotaged her gear. A loose bipod on her Barrett M82, causing her shots to veer wildly in a critical drill. "See cracking under pressure," he announced to the group, their nods fueling her isolation. Alone in her closet that night, Sarah nearly quit, the weight of discrimination crushing her spirit. Painful memories flooded in her father's death in the Pacific, a mission gone wrong amid whispers of cowardice. The flashback played vividly. A young Sarah receiving the folded flag, the official letter sparse on details, leaving her to imagine his final moments in the jungle heat, perhaps abandoning his post, as the secret implied. Compassion welled up for the man who had taught her everything, now tarnished in her mind. Tears traced her cheeks as she traced the eagle tattoo on her back, the ink hurting anew, like a fresh wound, a reminder to overcome. But how when everything conspired against her? In that despair, she reread his last letter. Soar high despite headwinds, my girl. True eagles don't flee the storm. They use it to rise. The words hit like a positive surprise, misdirecting her from cowardice to courage. Perhaps the secret was a cover for his ultimate sacrifice. Strength surged, twisting doubt into resolve. The mini-climax came the next day, positioned facing the blinding sun for her reequal glare searing her eyes. Sarah adjusted with improvised shadow from her spotter scope. She fired, dead center. Hargrave checked twice his face, betraying surprise. Again, he ordered. 3 more perfect hits. It was a sweet small acknowledgement, a crack in the armor of prejudice touching her heart with the first glimmer of possibility. But the storm raged on. What will make her continue despite everything against her? The call was refusing to let go. The call refused to release its grip on Sarah Harlan, pulling her through the crucible of doubt into the heart of sniper training at Fort Hawthorne. But in that storm of uncertainty, glimmers of guidance emerged like beacons cutting through fog. Sergeant Major Hargrave, the grizzled instructor, whose eyes held the weight of battles past, became an unlikely mentor. He had served with her father in '03, though he didn't reveal it at first. His initial dismissal was as sharp as a bayonet. Harlan, you're here on a whim. Women push limits differently. Muscle lungs resolve. Don't waste our time. His words echoed the prejudices she'd battled, but beneath his gruff exterior lay a man who had seen true courage, the kind her father embodied. The knots of harsh training twisted tighter from the outset. 72 hours without sleep in simulated combat, where exhaustion blurred the line between ally and enemy. Field-stripping weapons submerged in ice water, fingers numb and trembling, testing not just skill, but the will to endure. Sarah's strong frame, her fair skin chilled to the bone, her green eyes fighting fatigue, bore the brunt. Hargrave piled on, assigning her the heaviest loads, his tests feeling like deliberate barriers. Control it, or it controls you, he barked during one grueling night as she reassembled her Barrett M82 with frozen hands. The pain stirred memories of her father's teachings, resonant echoes that touched her heart deeply. It was in these depths that an ally appeared fresh and fierce, Master Sergeant Rivera, a female veteran with scars from multiple deployments and a fire that mirrored Sarah's own. Rivera, with her no-nonsense demeanor and stories of breaking barriers, pulled Sarah aside after a brutal session. Women must soar higher, Harlan, she said, her voice steady and encouraging. They'll clip your wings if you let them. But I've seen what you're made of, that quiet strength, like an eagle riding the storm. Rivera's words were a lifeline, a shared understanding that turned isolation into solidarity, emphasizing the equality Sarah had fought for silently. The twist came unexpectedly during a quiet debrief as Rivera reviewed Sarah's file. Your father, Thomas Harlan. I knew of him from the records. Sarah's heart clenched, the dark secret of betrayal looming, but Rivera leaned in her revelation, a surprise that misdirected the shadows. He didn't betray anyone. That was a cover. He sacrificed himself to save his team in the Pacific, drew fire so they could escape. A hero, not a coward. The truth washed over Sarah like a balm, touching her soul with profound compassion for the man who had given everything. In a resonant flashback, she recalled him at the kitchen table, his hand steady on the rifle. Control your fate, Sarah. Don't let the world dictate it. The memory so vivid brought tears, not of sorrow, but of renewed purpose, evoking the quiet heroism that older hearts weathered by their own wars would recognize and cherish. This revelation fueled the mini-climax in the hypoxia chamber, simulating 14,000 feet, where oxygen thinned and dizziness threatened. Sarah's vision narrowed her body, screaming to panic, but she drew on physiological control techniques, regulating breath between heartbeats, steadying her core as Rivera had advised. Oxygen saturation dropping, the medic warned. Abort. I'm fine, Sarah insisted, squeezing the trigger on a target the size of a playing card. Hit. Major Collins shook his head in review. Your heart rate barely budged. You see the whole problem, not just the target. It was a sweet acknowledgement, a crack in the fortress of doubt, warming her spirit with the first true validation. Rivera's alliance and Hargrave's gradual shift from skeptic to subtle guide wove a net of support. The eagle, once a personal emblem of pain, now varied in her mind, shared with an ally who understood the flight. But as the secrets unfolded, questions lingered. How will Father's secret change the journey? The path ahead promised more revelations. The revelations from Rivera and Hargrave lingered like a promise in Sarah Harlan's mind, fueling her steps as she crossed the threshold into the true heart of sniper training, the Advanced Tactical Applications course at a remote annex of Fort Hawthorne. This wasn't the structured world of basic drills anymore. It was the raw edge of reality, where mistakes weren't graded, but could cost lives. Sarah, her fair skin marked by the grit of endless marches, green eyes now hardened with quiet resolve, and her athletic build, that powerful, attractive form blending endurance with grace, felt the shift acutely. She was one of 7 trainees, the only woman the youngest by 6 years, stepping into a realm where snipers became ghosts, intellects, and weapons all in one. Major Collins made the stakes crystal clear on day 1. Forget what you think you know. You're not just shooters now. You're mission-critical assets, observers who alter battles with a single decision. The course pushed beyond human limits, demanding control over every breath, every blink. They learned to vanish into landscapes motionless for hours until birds perched on their camouflaged forms without suspicion. Harlan, your smaller frame means a fainter thermal signature, the camouflage instructor noted. Use it to your advantage. They studied wind patterns, obsessively reading mirage distortions, like a language feeling air currents whisper across their skin. Sarah thrived in the calculations, her physics background turning chaos into equations. Ballistics is physics, and physics demands precision, she reminded herself during midnight sessions, her fingers tracing formulas under dim light. The first real knot came with the infiltration challenge: penetrate a monitored perimeter, undetected, establish a hide for 72 hours, and eliminate a target without compromise. Sarah was assigned the hardest zone, a rocky ridge with minimal cover, a near vertical approach that tested body and will. Someone's got to take it, she said before objections arose, her voice steady, masking the internal storm. For 3 days, she moved only with the shadows, urinating in a bottle, snatching sleep in 20-minute bursts. When a scorpion crawled across her hand, its sting poised like a threat, she remained frozen, compassion stirring for the creature's survival instinct, a mirror to her own. The pain was a test, evoking a deep internal recall of her father under similar stress in the Pacific jungles, where he had endured wounds to protect his team. The memory touched her heart with profound compassion, a reminder that true strength lay in quiet endurance, not loud defiance. The small twist unfolded midway as the ridge turned sheer. Her load, the Barrett M82 system weighing heavy, threatened to betray her with noise. In a creative surprise, she shed non-essential gear, strapping only the rifle to her back. Her athletic frame scaling the rock face with invisible holds found by feel alone. "That's impossible silently," a teammate had whispered earlier. But Sarah calculated the risk, her slim waist and strong core propelling her upward, the eagle tattoo on her back seeming to flex with each pull, a symbol that soared through the challenge, varying from personal pain to triumphant flight. The mini-climax dawned on the final morning, the sun rising directly into her scope, glare blinding like a final adversary. Through it all, she tuned her breath, dialing in windage and elevation that defied the chaos. The shot cracked. Perfect hit. The evaluators reviewing footage later exchanged stunned glances. "Harlan infiltrated via that cliff, a route we deemed impossible." Their amazement was sweet, a validation that warmed her spirit, touching the resilient core her father had nurtured. As she descended the shift to reality, complete Sarah knew this was no longer preparation. It was the forge where legends were made. The eagle had carried her across the threshold, but the field awaited with its unforgiving trials. How will she survive in the field? The true tests were just beginning. The true tests were just beginning, a series of relentless challenges that forged Sarah Harlan's path through the shadowy depths of sniper training. No longer confined to the structured thresholds of entry, she plunged into the multi-layered conflicts of the advanced course, where external threats loomed like distant convoys on the horizon. Internal rivalries simmered within the team, and personal demons clawed at her resolve. Allies emerged. Slowly, enemies revealed themselves in whispers, and through it all, Sarah's strong spirit, her fair skin bearing the marks of exhaustion, green eyes piercing through doubt, and athletic, built a testament to unyielding grace, became the anchor in the storm. The infill test struck first a 72-hour gauntlet, demanding infiltration of a monitored perimeter establishment, of a hide and silent elimination of a target. External knots tightened as imagined convoy enemies patrolled their patterns, a puzzle of shadows and lights. Sarah's zone was the harshest, a jagged ridge with sparse cover, forcing her to become one with the terrain. Camouflage netting secured against gusts, she lay motionless, her Barrett M82 assembled with carbon bipod for stability. Education in wind patterns paid off. She read mirage distortions, like a book calculating how thermal updrafts bent light, how humidity altered bullet flight. Detailed ballistics isn't guesswork. She thought dialing in adjustments for Coriolis deflection over extreme ranges, where Earth's spin could shift a projectile inches off course. But the knots deepened internally. Captain Vance, the team leader with his burly frame and jealous glares, mocked her relentlessly. "Harlan, your precision won't hold when the boys play rough." His words echoed the prejudices she'd fought, but now laced with sabotage. A loosened scope mount on her rifle during prep, nearly costing her the drill. The personal struggle intertwined her father's WWII legacy, haunting her like a ghost. In quiet moments, flashbacks touched her memories. Thomas Harlan in the Pacific, drawing enemy fire to save his teammates, his betrayal, a fabricated shield for their escape. The compassion it evoked, for unsung heroes like him, for the older souls who remembered such sacrifices, stirred her heart, inspiring her to turn foes into allies through quiet proof. One mini-climax came under hypoxia simulation, the chamber mimicking 14,000 feet, where oxygen starved the brain. Vision tunneling body, urging panic. Sarah controlled her physiology, heartbeat slowed to 52 BPM, breath metered between pulses. Elevated rates disrupt precision, she recalled from training applying techniques to override autonomic responses. The target, a playing card at distance, swam in her scope. She fired, hit dead center. Major Collins reviewed, impossible under these conditions. It was a sweet small change, his praise, a crack in the wall of doubt touching her with validation that resonated like her father's unseen valor. Another knot twisted during a night infill, where Vance's mockery escalated to outright interference, his jealousy boiling over into tampered gear. A faulty bipod that could betray her position with a clatter. The major twist unfolded when she discovered it. Mid-mission, Vance exposed his sabotage laid bare. Audience expectation leaned toward report and retribution, but Sarah forgave in a misdirection of mercy, using the flaw as proof of her adaptability, recalibrating on the fly to turn weakness into strength. "We rise together," she told him quietly, inspiring a reluctant shift in him from enemy to wary ally. The Scorpion incident marked another mini-climax, a symbol of endurance. As the creature crawled across her hand in her hide sting, poised, Sarah remained statue still, sparing it with compassion that mirrored her father's sacrifices. The pain she endured echoed deeper struggles, but in a dream that night, the eagle loop varied a majestic bird, flying through a raging storm, not fleeing, but harnessing the winds to soar higher. It touched her soul, a resonant vision for those who had weathered their own tempests. Allies Torres and Jackson, initially skeptical, gradually trusted her. Torres with comms support Jackson patching minor wounds, inspired by her forgiveness of Vance turning foes into a fragile bond. The internal prejudice avoided through these personal layers, educated on ballistics, unforgiving math, velocity drop spin, tools that leveled any field. Yet knots remained taut. How will the internal enemy reveal himself fully? The alliances were forming, but the field held greater shadows. The greater shadows loomed as Sarah Harlan's training culminated in her first real deployment. Operation Silent. Whisper, a border recon mission in a disputed region between fictional nations, where insurgent movements threatened fragile peace. It was meant to be straightforward: observe traffic through a mountain pass, gather intel on weapons, smuggling, and exfiltrate undetected. No combat, just eyes and ears. But for Sarah, now a specialist, with her Barrett M82 slung across her back, it was the approach to the inmost cave, the precipice where preparation met peril. Inserted via high-altitude, low-opening jump in the dead of night, she landed with her 4-person team, Captain Vance Sergeant Torres, on comms Corporal Jackson as medic and herself as designated marksman. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine and impending storm, her fair skin prickling against the cold as they trekked 20 kilometers to the objective. From the outset, knots of tension coiled. Vance, his jealousy from training still simmering assigned tasks with a subtle edge, his burly frame casting long shadows in the moonlight. Harlan, take point on navigation. Stars only, no tech. He ordered a test wrapped in command. Sarah complied, her green eyes scanning the heavens, as her father had taught, plotting their path with celestial precision. Technology fails, but the stars endure, Thomas had said in one of his letters from the Pacific. The team moved silently for 3 days, covering tracks, avoiding locals, whose lives hung in the balance of unseen wars. Compassion stirred in Sarah for these innocents, evoking memories of WWII, civilian sacrifices her father had described, villages caught in crossfire, families shattered by distant decisions. It touched her heart, a quiet humanity that fueled her vigilance. On the 4th day, they reached the observation post, a rocky outcrop overlooking the pass. Sarah established her hide while the others set up surveillance. But as dusk fell, the small twist unfolded. Through her scope, she spotted not just the convoy of unmarked trucks, escorted by armed men, but a nearby civilian village nestled in the adjacent valley. Homes flickering with lantern light, children playing unaware of the danger. Curiosity about saving these innocents gnawed at her. The missiles being assembled below could devastate them if things went wrong. "Sir, security's too tight for locals," she whispered to Vance. "And that village, it's downwind." He dismissed it. "Focus on the intel, Harlan. Emotions cloud judgment." The knot tightened that night as a storm front accelerated winds, howling like omens. Vance, Torres, and Jackson huddled in debate, their prejudices resurfacing in hushed tones. "She's cracking already. Women and pressure don't mix." Outrage burned in Sarah's chest as they temporarily abandoned her at the forward position, pulling back to reassess under the guise of strategy. Left alone on the exposed ridge, bleeding hands gripping slick rocks as she climbed higher to Eagle's Crest, for better vantage, she teetered near collapse. The storm lashed her, her athletic build straining against the gale's slim waist and strong core fighting for every inch. Fingers raw and torn, she slipped once, hanging by willpower alone. Why push when they doubt you? The wind seemed to whisper. In that moment of near defeat, she recalled her father. Not the hero revealed, but the man in pain, sacrificing in the Pacific to shield civilians from artillery. The compassion for those villagers below mirrored his stories of wartime humanity, touching her soul with a resonant ache. Her eagle tattoo exposed as her shirt tore, ached, like a living reminder of sacrifice, the ink pulsing with each heartbeat, a symbol that refused to let her fall. Drawing on it, she pressed on, harnessing the headwinds as her father had urged. The mini-climax crested as she reached the summit, hands bleeding but steady. Setting her position with methodical grace. Camouflage-secured rifle-mounted, she became part of the peak, a sweet physical triumph that washed over her like dawn's first light, validating her endurance. The storm raged, but so did her resolve humanity for the innocents below, fueling her watch. Yet the cave's depths beckoned. What secret will the battle reveal? The convoy stirred below, and the true ordeal awaited. The convoy stirred below, and the true ordeal awaited a life-or-death convergence, where every calculation, every breath hung in the balance. Sarah Harlan settled into her hide on Eagle's Crest summit, the storm's fury whipping around her like a vengeful force. Her fair skin, numbed by the cold green eyes, narrowed through the scope, and her athletic build, that resilient form of strength and grace, anchored her against the gale. The Barrett M82 rested on its bipod, custom modified for harmonics that matched her precise trigger pull. Distance 3, 800 meters. Elevation drop 213 meters. Temperature near freezing. Winds gusting 18 to 25 knots, swirling in treacherous layers across the valley. Below the convoy of 3 unmarked trucks, halted armed men unloading advanced surface-to-air missile systems, a threat that could shatter Allied air superiority and endanger countless lives, including the village she had spotted, its lanterns flickering innocently downwind. External knots gripped tight the insurgents' professional and alert their patterns too precise for locals. But the life-death knot twisted deeper with an internal betrayal that shattered her world. As she acquired the target, the command vehicle's communications array a paperback-sized vulnerability moving at 15 feet. Vance's voice crackled over the radio, his tone laced with urgency. "Harlan, hold fire! Intel shift! They're expecting us!" Suspicion flared. His earlier abandonments, his sabotage and training now clicked into place. Peering through her spotter scope, she caught a glimpse Vance captured no. Colluding, signaling the convoy from a hidden vantage. The dark secret reversed everything. His jealousy had festered into treason, tied to her father's WWII case. Vance had uncovered the betrayal file, using it to blackmail or align with shadows that echoed the cover-ups her father had died to expose. Multi-layered agony surged, external enemies below internal traitor. Within the team, personal echoes of her father's sacrifice, ripping open old wounds. Heart pounding, Sarah recalculated the Coriolis effect, demanding adjustment for Earth's rotation at this latitude, a deflection that could veer the 750-grain projectile feet off course over such distance. Full ballistics flooded her mind, bullet drop exceeding 200 feet flight time, nearly 7 seconds, accounting for humidity's burn rate on powder mirage distortions from temperature gradients. Physics doesn't lie, she whispered, dialing in absurd windage that trusted math over instinct. The first mini-climax erupted with a sudden squall, winds spiking unpredictably, shredding her initial solution. Panic clawed. The body wanted to falter, as her father had described in his letters. From the Pacific, storms test the soul. But she harnessed it, recalibrating mid-gust, feeling air currents on her skin, like whispers from the past. Inhale, partial, exhale, absolute stillness. She squeezed between heartbeats. The Barrett roared, the shot hurtling at 2,700 feet per second. For endless seconds, doubt screamed miss. The major twist exploded as the command vehicle swerved, array erupting in sparks. Hit. But misdirection deepened. It wasn't just the convoy disabled. The strike revealed Vance's collusion, his position exposed in the chaos ally Rivera. Captured earlier in a setup Sarah now understood. Freed in the diversion. The village spared from potential fallout. Innocents saved like the civilians her father had protected. Emotional explosion rocked her internal recall of Thomas's sacrifice, drawing fire to shield his team, deeply touching her heart, with a profound compassion that mirrored her own. Tears blurred her scope, but resolve sharpened. Justice, not vengeance, drove her. The second mini-climax surged as pursuit vehicles closed on her team below Vance's treachery, summoning reinforcements. Winds howled, but Sarah soared in the storm. Winds the eagle loop, transforming her tattoo, a victory symbol, inked legacy, propelling her to fire again. Not at men, but engine blocks, halting the chase in steam and sparks. Sweet sacrifice washed over her saving teammates who had doubted her, turning betrayal into redemption. Radio crackled. "Harlan, how that's unprecedented!" Mission salvaged convoy neutralized Vance's dark ties, severed. But as she disassembled her rifle, the ordeal's weight lingered. How will the dark secret reverse the situation fully? Extraction beckoned, but revelations promised more. Back at base, the ordeal's echoes faded into a resonant acknowledgement that wrapped Sarah Harlan like a long-awaited embrace. The mission classified a success. Missiles neutralized, intel secured, no casualties on their side. But the true reward unfolded in quiet moments, where victories weren't measured in distances, but in changed hearts. Sergeant Major Hargrave met her first, his once disdainful eyes now softened with respect. "Harlan," he said, sliding a folder across the desk, "your father would be proud. That shot, it rewrote the manual." The promotion to sergeant followed a badge of her triumph, pinned with his own hands. "I was wrong about you," he admitted, his voice gruff but genuine. "You've earned this." The knots began to unravel as teammates changed their prejudices, crumbling under the weight of her proven valor. Torres and Jackson, who had once followed Vance's lead in doubt, approached with bowed heads. "We left you out there," Jackson said, his voice thick with regret. "Assumed you'd crack." Sarah met their eyes, her green eyes steady. "Assumptions are variables we can control." In a sweet knot of humanity they hugged, apologies unspoken, but felt a team forged anew from the fires of betrayal. Vance exposed by the convoy's captured data logs, linking him to the insurgents, faced swift punishment court-martial pending his jealousies, unmasked as the rot within. But Sarah's compassion shone. She advocated for leniency in her report, noting how doubt had twisted him, inspiring a ripple of mercy that touched the base's core. The small twist arrived like a gift from the past, buried in the convoy's encrypted files, evidence proving her father heroic, not traitorous. The betrayal was a deliberate cover. Thomas Harlan had sacrificed himself in the Pacific, luring enemies away to save his squad and nearby villagers from bombardment. The revelation washed over Sarah in waves of compassion, vindicating the man who had shaped her resonant for those who carried similar wartime scars. Tears fell as she traced her eagle tattoo, now soaring high, proudly on her back. No longer a mark of pain, but a badge of legacy reclaimed. It touched her heart deeply, a positive emotion that healed old wounds, evoking the quiet pride her father must have felt in his final stand. The mini-climax crested in a family letter scene, delivered by courier amid the debrief chaos. From her mother, the envelope worn but warm. Your dad always knew you'd soar. This news. It brings him back. Enclosed was a faded photo of Thomas in uniform, his eyes mirroring hers, and a note in his handwriting. Control your fate, and let justice follow. The sweetness enveloped her, a family moment that grounded her victory humanity in the hugs and words that bridged generations. Compassion for her mother's enduring loss mingled with joy, creating a resonant glow that inspired those around her. Logically flowing from the ordeal, these rewards, promotion, team unity, father's vindication, validated her path, humanity shining in the change from division to bond. The base buzzed with her story, prejudices eroding like sandcastles before the tide. But as Sarah cleaned her rifle that evening, a quiet certainty settled. Is this victory just the beginning? The road back held its own shadows. The road back held its own shadows, a treacherous return where victory's glow dimmed under fresh threats. Sarah Harlan lifted off in the extraction helicopter, the rotor wash drowning the chaos below, but peace was fleeting. The convoy's disablement had rippled outward, exposing Vance's collusion like a festering wound. His signals intercepted his ties to the insurgents confirmed. Punished, but not silenced, he orchestrated a final pursuit from the shadows, rallying remnants to chase the team across rugged terrain. Back at base, the air hummed with debriefs, but Sarah's instincts screamed warning. Her fair skin still flushed from the peak's cold green eyes. Scanning horizons, her athletic build coiled like a spring. She sensed the unfinished business. The unexpected knot unraveled as they transitioned to ground transport for the final leg to Fort Hawthorne. Rain lashed down in sheets, turning paths to mudslides, visibility near zero. Vance's forces, fueled by desperation, closed in, vehicles roaring through the deluge gunfire cracking like thunder. The multi-layered assault hit hard external pursuit from armed remnants, internal echoes of betrayal as Vance's voice hacked their comms. You think you've won, Harlan? Your father's heroism was a lie, and so is yours. The words pierced stirring doubt, but Sarah rallied the team Torres on frantic radio calls, Jackson tending a grazed wound. They're cutting us off, Vance. No, the traitor, taunted his internal rot, now fully externalized. In the downpour, Sarah established overwatch from a rain-slicked ridge, her Barrett M82 battling the elements. Rain shooting demanded recalibration, water distorting optics, humidity swelling powder bullet trajectories, warped by sheets of precipitation. Education in adversity, her father had called it. In his letters techniques for firing under monsoon conditions in the Pacific, She adjusted for deflection, dialing and elevation to counter the added drag. Logic in the chaos value in turning nature's fury to advantage. The twist deepened mid-ambush. Sifting convoy data on a secured tablet, Sarah discovered General Weber's name, the stern commander overseeing special ops, buried in the files. He had hidden her father's case, suppressing the sacrifice to protect a network of biases, perhaps even colluding in cover-ups that echoed WWII scandals. System curiosity ignited. Was this the root of her obstacles? A higher prejudice shielding traitors like Vance? The revelation fueled her, turning personal pain into systemic fire. The mini-climax crested as pursuing vehicles bore down headlights, piercing the storm. Sarah recalled her father in similar rain-soaked hells, sacrificing under torrents to shield his men, a memory that touched her heart with aching compassion, resonant for those who knew war's wet misery. The Eagle Loop varied, soaring through the rainstorm, not battered, but empowered her tattoo, a talisman against the deluge. Breath-controlled, she fired, not at lives, but engine blocks hits exploding in steam and halt. The vehicles skidded to stops, pursuit shattered. It was sweet a triumph that saved her team, their grateful nods a balm in the downpour. Extraction secured the base, loomed, but shadows lingered. Vance captured his final gambit broken, yet Weber's secret loomed larger. The road back had tested her anew, transitioning from isolated ordeal to broader battles. Will the system prejudice be broken? The resurrection awaited. The resurrection awaited a final reckoning, where shadows of doubt dissolved into the light of undeniable truth. Back at Fort Hawthorne, the base thrummed with whispers of Sarah Harlan's impossible shot, but General Weber, the stern overseer with his piercing gaze and ironclad authority, loomed as the ultimate knot. He summoned her to his office, files stacked like barriers, his voice laced with skepticism. Specialist Harlan, rumors of your miracle at Eagle's Crest have reached high command. But one fluke doesn't rewrite doctrine. Weber, the embodiment of the old guard, doubted her from the start, his prejudices veiled in protocol. Women in elite roles, science and history say otherwise. He set an impossible test, a demonstration shot at 4,000 meters under extreme conditions. Gusting winds, rain-slicked range targets obscured by artificial fog, designed to expose her as a fraud before assembled officers and snipers. Sarah stood tall, her fair skin steady under scrutiny, green eyes unblinking her athletic build, a silent testament to battles won. The knot tightened as Weber's words echoed the systemic bias that had haunted her journey from closet quarters to sabotaged gear. But she carried the convoy's evidence, data chips revealing not just Vance's treason, but Weber's hand in hiding her father's case, suppressing Thomas Harlan's heroism to protect a network of gender biases that favored the old boys club. The audience anticipated a mere demo, a showcase of skill under duress, but Sarah prepared for more, a flip that would turn the test into system justice. The range complex roared to life with industrial fans, whipping 30-knot crosswinds, rain machines drenching the field, fog rolling like battlefield smoke. Targets appeared at random, vanishing in seconds, demanding recalibrations that defied human limits. Weber watched from the observation platform, arms crossed. Prove it or pack up. Sarah settled behind her Barrett, the rifle an extension of her will. Emotions surged. Positive anticipation of female acknowledgement, a vindication for every woman pushed aside. She recalled the prejudices, the doubts, channeling them into focus. The major twist exploded midway as she dialed in for the first shot, accounting for Coriolis bullet drop over 250 feet, wind layers shearing unpredictably. She wove in the evidence. Between breaths, she radioed subtly to allies, uploading data now. The files hit Weber's tablet mid-demo, revealing his cover-up falsified reports, on her father's Pacific sacrifice, buried to avoid scrutiny on biased promotions. Misdirection peaked. The audience thought the demo was the climax, but it turned to system justice. Weber's face paling as officers murmured, This is insubordination." He blustered, but the truth cascaded. Mini-climax built-in waves first hit through fog dead center, second under gust that nearly tore her bipod. All targets struck with surgical precision, the base erupting in stunned silence. "She's rewriting what's possible," an officer whispered. The sweet, full respect washed over. Snipers who once doubted now nodded a collective change, rippling through the ranks, touching her with profound validation. Emotions peaked positive acknowledgement of her as a woman who shattered ceilings, inspiring equality in a world long resistant. The Eagle Loop culminated soaring high as legend. Her tattoo a beacon of triumph, no longer a scar, but a crown. Weber, cornered by the evidence, conceded, "You've exposed more than targets." His fall from grace, reassigned pending investigation, sealed the resurrection her victory, not just personal, but systemic. But as applause faded, a final explosion lingered. How will the legend be born? The elixir of change beckoned. The elixir of change beckoned a profound gift Sarah Harlan carried from her resurrection, ready to infuse the world with lessons, hard-won on distant peaks and in the depths of doubt. Months passed, and Fort Hawthorne transformed under her influence. The base no longer a fortress of old prejudices, but a beacon of possibility. Promoted to staff, Sergeant Sarah became the lead instructor at the newly established Advanced Long-Range Precision School, a program born from her triumphs designed to push boundaries beyond what doctrine deemed possible. She stood before her first class, 20 hand-picked shooters from across branches, including 3 women whose eyes mirrored her own youthful fire. "You're here not just for skill," she began, her fair skin glowing with quiet authority. Green eyes connecting with each student, her athletic build a living emblem of strength earned. But to redefine limits. As instructor Sarah passed her elixir to the next generation, her methodologies, refined calculations, physiological mastery, unyielding resilience, becoming the curriculum's core. She watched female students grapple with the same doubts she had faced, offering guidance laced with compassion. Prejudice is just another variable. Control it, and you control your fate. The final knot tightened in a training exercise mirroring her own ordeals. A young woman specialist, Reyes, assigned the hardest hide on a storm-swept ridge. Teetering near failure, Reyes radioed in panic. Sarah's voice cut through. "Recall your why. Soar above the storm." Reyes steadied, overcoming the challenge. A generational symbol, the elixir flowing forward, resonant through the legacy of those who had paved the way. The small twist arrived in a quiet moment after the drill, as Sarah reviewed Reyes's log. A final father flashback surprised her, completing the loop, Thomas Harlan in the Pacific, not in defeat, but in his last stand, whispering to a photo of her as a child. "Limits are illusions, my eagle. Break them for those who follow." The memory surged, like a twist of fate, touching her heart with sweet finality. His quote, the mini-climax that sealed her journey, a sweet echo that brought tears of joy, resonant in its humanity, bridging past sacrifices to future hopes. Emotions swelled as the class gathered the women's triumphs, a mirror to her own, inspiring a community bound by shared resilience. The Eagle Loop ended triumphantly, no longer a personal scar or storm-ridden flight, but soaring high for community, a symbol that lifted all. Sarah traced her tattoo one last time, feeling its power extend beyond her skin into the lives she touched. The school flourished, synthesizing her message into doctrine equality, not as theory, but practice. An open ending lingered. New students arriving, challenges evolving, but the elixir enduring. What do you think of Sarah's journey? Share your overcoming stories below. Like if it inspired you, sub for more tales of triumph. Where are you watching from? As the scriptwriter, the message to the community. Overcoming prejudice isn't just with strength, but with resilience and compassion. Values that help us soar higher, build a fair society, and inspire future generations.